Tearlaments is an archetype best known for its time as a Tier 0 strategy. Tier 0 formats are always contentious no matter the gameplay, as it inevitably leads to forcing people to play the deck in question. Tier did not invent this conundrum, it was simply another deck that followed this pattern. As a result, Tier is an archetype that is loved and hated in equal measure. But where do I stand on Tier? This deck ruined the game. The game being gambling, of course. I'm not joking with you right now. I hate Tier because it makes a mockery of the art form that is gambling. There is no winning big, if there is no losing big. Playing Tier isn't like being at the casino. It's more akin to running one. The entire strategy revolves around milling your cards, as they all have effects that trigger if they hit the grave. Because of the design at play, you aren't likely to miss. So the deck was extremely consistent, and when they printed a card like Kitclose, as well as the Ishizu cards to mill even more to make their consistency completely infallible, you couldn't possibly lose on a spin. This is revolting to any real gambler. Tier is just Lightsworn, but power crept to dust. Unlike Lightsworn, Tier has no bad cards that you're forced to play. Wolf and Feelers are god-awful cards. You draw them, you're out of luck. But if you mill them, they're crazy. This is the true beauty of gambling. If you open any Tier name, you are going all in without fail. Tier does utilize its mills for a more interesting payoff mechanically, using their graveyard to perform fusions whenever a name gets milled. It's more interesting than summon idiot that can combo into something. The closest Tier gets to having cards like Feelers and Wolf are their Spell Traps and Rhinoheart. But incidentally, the ones that have good activation effects are also ones that help consistency, like Rhinoheart. They don't really add a new dimension to the deck's game plan. I'm not necessarily saying they should have made Tier monsters that are as bad as these two. Hell, they made Twice, which turned drawing Wolf or Feelers into a positive, as you could guarantee you mill them instead. What I'm saying is they should have made cards that offered more variation in the deck's playstyle based on you drawing them or milling them. Every name is designed in the same way to fuse when sent to grave via the same method. The variation in their other effects, likewise, is less unique and more so utilitarian. Ideally, you'd want to strike a balance between the two, but seemingly there wasn't much desire to do so. No names that could fuse using cards excluding itself, so as to allow for more unique fusions to be performed should that card be milled. No names that fuse using different locations, just one uniform, standard, perform fusion summon if milled. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't design a fusion effect that just let you branded fusion Tier monsters straight up. Instead, they made Kitclose, which is more broken than that somehow. This deck functionally has a Foolish Burial that could flexibly be an E-Telly, and they don't even play it. Think about that. The milling in excess is so egregious that a card other archetypes would absolutely kill for isn't even worth playing. Havness is notable for being an archetypal hand trap that, instead of outright interrupting the opponent's plays, allows for you to make plays of your own during their turn. Since she mills, and the deck is designed the way that it is, you're using materials from your deck functionally rather than your hand, making it so you don't really lose card advantage, all while still making plays with her. This is neat design that teeters closely to what I want from the deck. It's a genuinely good card, unlike these two, and does introduce a new dynamic to the game. However, I am a hater, and this isn't good enough. Also, it requires drawing her, not milling her, so we still miss the most important part of a mill deck's design. I don't care about any of its other main deck lineup. As they exist, they're just cogs in a well-oiled machine. Merly's a 2, so they got to abuse Elf. Cool. Shyren's a free summon, I guess. Kitclose is a custom card. Rollclose is a okay card. Kaleidoheart's kinda cool though, but the archetype as a whole does not really make me interested in them. Lightsworn had another issue that Tier never can. The reality that they could actually deck themselves out, or even run out of relevant names to mill, leaving the deck susceptible the longer the game goes on. But by Tier's very own design, they put the cards back into the deck, giving them infinite grind game. functionally keeping all of their resources. That's right, you get to keep winning on your spins. You'd think an inherent balance to this deck would be running low on names as the game goes on, making it increasingly harder to win on your spins, and thusly giving the deck a weakness. But no, the house always wins, baby! The deck, of course, has been hit by now. It's not a new product anymore, so it still gets taken out back like everything else does. Names are in lower quantity, and the cards that made them hyper-consistent in milling every single name are gone. Finally, you can lose on your gambles, just as God intended. But why do I still not like this archetype despite their consistency being reined in? Well, because who cares about gambling if it's supplemented with genuine fun? The most legitimate thing to hate about Tier was the Ishizu cards also milling out your opponent, making it difficult for other decks to play in general, with them losing out on precious resources as a result. This is relevant because Tier debuted alongside Spright. While Tier was the objectively better deck, in part because the milling hurt Spright, Spright had achieved something that Tier didn't. It created a sandbox that people were eager to explore. Sprite's existence suddenly recontextualized the existence of every card with the number 2 printed on it. Things like Hero Kid became an insane extender, as long as you don't draw any copies of it. Or the more real picks like Wind Up Kitten, a card that was phenomenal removal that became super accessible. This archetype that didn't have gambling made me a millionaire for a week. The twins got a stint of playability perfectly synergizing with Sprite's design. Of course, there was also the return of the frogs and the nimble cards getting a chance to shine, giving Spright an insane resource engine. I hate Runic, so I'll not be mentioning it in a positive light. Spright brought out a lot of deck building creativity and interesting tech choices. It brought out fun in toying around with the sandbox. In a way, it really let players express themselves in deck building. Tier, on the other hand, you mill and you mill, but all you do is summon tier monsters. Boring! The only interesting thing they'd mill was an opponent's Necomana King, as the world's worst gigabrain tech. While Tearlaments could technically perform a generic fusion summon, the actual depths of their summoning capabilities was severely limited by the Tearlament milled needing to be a material in the summon, leaving them with a less diverse playstyle. That's right, I'm saying Tier wasn't broken enough. I should be able to manufacture a way to summon Zark off of a Tearlament, make dual avatar actually function, be able to do something remotely interesting even if it isn't very good. I originally tried Tier with Dragon Maid because laundry can finally do something, and because the archetype is fusion oriented, only to realize, alright, Tiers aren't dragons, they need dragons. Okay, unfortunate, but surely there's some other interesting fusion shenanigans to play with, right? No, it's just making tier fusions or generic fusion staples that are already commonplace, like Dragostapelia and Mud. Tearlament's greatest crime is being limited. The deck is just Lightsworn but good. What's the point? The fusion stuff feels more like cheap flair and less like intriguing design direction. Like I mentioned earlier, its hyperfixation on consistency hampered its design and versatility. I mentioned a theoretical mill fusion that lets you perform a fusion without itself, and that's the sort of thing I want to see from this deck's design concept, giving a way to explore mill and fusion synergies, but that design potential was neglected entirely. It just so happened that the only fit for that synergy summoned a floodgate. I don't care if this was considered bad, the fact the only creative spin you could apply was summoning a floodgate is truly eye-opening to how miserably implemented it was. I felt cheated by its design. A gambling deck with no gambling, and a deck with little mechanical nuance or expression in deck building. Don't get it twisted. My words, not your mills. The deck's consistency makes sense. Every deck has to be consistent in order to function. Otherwise, you have a deck that's frustrating to play in general. However, Tearlaments lacks a lot of inherent aspects that make the gamble feel like a gamble. There were cards like Snow that were neat tools for the deck and emulated that luck of the gamble, but the actual depth of that card pool was lacking. Tearlaments is truly the only tier 0 deck where I can say to you with a straight face, the problem with the deck is that it isn't more broken. It is an archetype that were its gambles more wacky, its sandbox more deep, it very well could have been one of my favorites in the game. I can't help but feel like the people that like Tearlaments see this very thing in the archetype. However, to me, that image is a mere mirage, and I would prefer not to chase an illusion. I would rather see it be real. That's right. Tearlaments Archetype Architect is on the way! While not exclusive to Tier, I wish they actually had more synergy with Vsauce himself, especially considering almost all the Tier cards make direct reference to him in their effects. Of course he shows up in Scareclaw and Manatium, but Tears feels like the most weirdly obsessive. Which is really strange when you consider Manatium exists solely as an archetype that can use Vsauce. You can blow up a tier on field and trigger their fusion with Visas, but that's about the full extent to their synergy. Vicious Astrolaud is close to being a connecting thread, but isn't actually designed as one. Since there's always a powered-up version of his counterparts as the boss monster of each archetype, I would have liked to have seen secondary boss monsters with Vsauce himself instead of just his counterpart, reflecting how he can bring out potential in them as well, but in a more pure way. Overall, Tier misses the mark for me and really doesn't deserve the praise it got. It's an archetype that was too scared to be truly special, and for that, I cannot forgive it. But perhaps the biggest reason I hate Tier, you gotta play the deck! It's so fun. You'll see, you understand. Just play the deck. It's so sick. Just play it. You will like it. You will absolutely like it. The gameplay is so good. You just have to play with the cards. You'll understand once you play the cards. It's the best gameplay in the entire game. If you just play them, you will understand it is the best cardboard ever printed. You will know that it's good. It's good. It's good gameplay. You will want to play them. You will love it. You will understand that this deck fucking sucks! Fuck you.